Emotions are not just feelings, they are deeply biological phenomena, anchored in the wiring of our nervous system, shaped by our past experiences, and modulated by our environment. When we talk about love, fear, connection, heartbreak, or even hope, we're not talking about abstract ideas. We're talking about neurochemical cascades, brain, body feedback loops, and patterns of physiological activation that influence how we perceive and interact with the world. Emotions are actionable states, and understanding the mechanisms that give rise to them allows us to shape our inner world, and by extension, our relationships with others. Every emotional experience begins with sensory input, either external, like a facial expression or voice tone, or internal, like a gut sensation or racing heartbeat. The brain constantly receives and integrates this information, and depending on the context, it assigns meaning. This meaning assignment largely takes place in regions like the amygdala, insula, and prefrontal cortex. These structures assess the significance of what we're sensing. Is it a threat? Is it rewarding? Is it familiar or novel? This process is what determines our emotional reaction, whether we feel safe, anxious, connected, or distant. Now, one of the key principles of emotional processing is interoception, the brain's ability to sense the internal state of the body. If your heart is racing, your breathing is shallow, and your muscles are tense, your brain picks up on these signals and may interpret them as anxiety, even in the absence of an external threat. Similarly, a slow, rhythmic breathing pattern and a relaxed body posture can signal safety, triggering feelings of calm or even trust. What this means is that emotions are not purely cognitive, they are somatic. They emerge from the body as much as from the brain. When we enter into relationships, whether romantic, familial, or platonic, we are essentially entering a neurobiological feedback loop with another individual. Our nervous systems begin to synchronize. This synchronization can be measured through phenomena like heart rate coherence, mirror neuron activation, and the alignment of brainwave patterns. One example of this is limbic resonance, a process through which our emotional states are literally contagious. When someone we care about is calm, our nervous system often mirrors that calm. When they're anxious or agitated, our own system ramps up. This is not metaphorical, it is neurobiological coupling. Oxytocin is a molecule often associated with bonding, but its effects are context-dependent. It enhances social salience, meaning it amplifies the importance of social cues. In safe environments, oxytocin promotes trust, eye contact, and connection. In threatening environments, however, it can enhance in-group bias and even mistrust of outsiders. So oxytocin isn't a love drug, it's a social amplifier. Its release is stimulated by behaviors such as touch, eye gaze, and synchronized movement, like walking together or dancing. These are not just cultural rituals, they are evolutionarily conserved practices that stimulate neurochemicals to deepen attachment. Dopamine also plays a critical role in relationships. Most people associate dopamine with pleasure, but its primary function is motivation. It drives us to seek, to pursue, to anticipate. In the context of relationships, dopamine is released during the initial stages of attraction, the so-called honeymoon phase, when novelty and unpredictability are high. But over time, as the relationship stabilizes, dopamine levels can decline unless novelty and growth are reintroduced. This is one of the reasons long-term relationships require effort and intentionality. To keep the dopaminergic system engaged, we must continue to explore, challenge, and discover, both individually and together. Cortisol, the primary stress hormone, is another important piece of this equation. Chronic stress dysregulates our ability to connect. When cortisol levels are persistently elevated due to work pressure, unresolved trauma, or poor sleep, it becomes harder for the prefrontal cortex to regulate the amygdala. This means our emotional reactions become more reflexive, less thoughtful. We may become irritable, withdrawn, or hyper-vigilant. In relationships, this can lead to misinterpretation of intent. A neutral comment from a partner may be perceived as criticism. A moment of silence may be interpreted as rejection. These aren't just miscommunications, they are stress-induced distortions of reality. Understanding the role of the autonomic nervous system is essential. The sympathetic branch prepares the body for action, fight or flight, while the parasympathetic branch promotes rest, digestion, and social connection. When both systems are balanced, we experience what's known as autonomic flexibility, the ability to respond to challenges without becoming overwhelmed. People with high autonomic flexibility tend to have healthier relationships because they can remain emotionally present during conflict, repair ruptures more easily, and adapt to changes. Fortunately, this flexibility is trainable through practices like breathwork, cold exposure, meditation, and even consistent exercise. Now, one of the most fascinating findings in this field is the role of early attachment in shaping our adult relationships. The patterns we develop in childhood, based on how reliably our caregivers met our needs, form templates in the brain that influence how we relate to others later in life. These templates are not conscious beliefs. They are encoded in neural circuitry. An individual with secure attachment typically has a well-regulated stress response and an expectation that others are reliable. Someone with anxious or avoidant attachment, on the other hand, may experience hypervigilance or emotional suppression, respectively. This is not a life sentence. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire, is a lifelong capacity, but rewiring takes repetition, safety, and often co-regulation with another human being. Communication, from a neuroscience perspective, is more than the exchange of words. It's a multisensory experience. The tone of voice, pacing, facial expression, and even silence all carry information. The vagus nerve, which connects the brain to most of the internal organs, plays a central role in detecting these social cues. When we hear a warm, calm tone, the vagus nerve sends signals of safety to the brain. When we perceive threat in someone's voice or expression, it triggers sympathetic activation, even if their words are neutral. So when people say it's not what you said, it's how you said it, they're actually describing a measurable physiological response. Repair after conflict is another area of interest. Studies show that the ability to repair, to apologize, to listen, to validate, activates reward circuitry in the brain. It also reduces physiological arousal, restoring autonomic balance. Successful repair builds trust, and trust is the cornerstone of any resilient relationship. Trust, from a neural standpoint, is essentially a prediction. It's the belief that someone will behave in a way that aligns with our safety and well-being. Every time that prediction is confirmed, the neural pathway is reinforced. Every time it's violated, especially without repair, that pathway weakens. Over time, this can erode the relational bond. Emotions are also shaped by memory. The hippocampus, which is involved in encoding and retrieving memories, is tightly linked to the amygdala. When we experience an emotionally significant event, the memory is more likely to be stored vividly. This is adaptive. It helps us learn from past experiences, but it can also create distortions. For example, if someone has been betrayed in the past, they may overactivate their threat detection systems in new relationships. This doesn't mean the new person is untrustworthy. It means the nervous system is attempting to prevent future harm. Again, awareness of these mechanisms allows for intentional override. We can learn to pause, reflect, and assess whether the current situation truly mirrors the past or merely resembles it. An under-discussed but crucial component of emotional regulation is sleep. During deep sleep, the brain undergoes synaptic pruning, emotional processing, and memory consolidation. REM sleep, in particular, is involved in the modulation of emotional memories. When sleep is disrupted, the amygdala becomes hyperactive, and the prefrontal cortex, our center of rational decision-making, loses some of its regulatory power. This makes us more reactive, less empathic, and more prone to conflict. In relationships, prioritizing sleep is not just a health decision, it's a relational one. Nutrition and gut health also feed into this system. The gut-brain axis is a bidirectional communication pathway involving the vagus nerve, hormones, and immune molecules. Certain gut bacteria are involved in the production of neurotransmitters like serotonin, which influences mood and social behavior. Inflammation in the gut can lead to inflammation in the brain, which has been linked to symptoms of anxiety and depression. What we eat, both individually and together, has the potential to influence our emotional tone and therefore the health of our relationships. Touch is another profound modulator of emotion. See tactile afferents. Nerve fibers in the skin respond to gentle, slow touch, sending signals to the brain regions involved in pleasure and social bonding. Touch reduces cortisol, increases oxytocin, and activates parasympathetic pathways. It communicates safety in a way words cannot. This is why holding hands, hugging, or even sitting close to someone can de-escalate conflict or reinforce connection. These are not sentimental gestures. They are biological interventions. Lastly, we need to understand the importance of intentionality. The brain is a prediction machine. It constantly generates expectations based on prior experience. If we do not consciously update those expectations through new behavior, new environments, and new relational patterns, we will default to old scripts, even if they no longer serve us. Change requires consistency, but more importantly, it requires attention. Attention is the gateway to neuroplasticity. Where attention goes, neural firing flows, and where neurons fire together, they wire together. So when we talk about improving our emotional lives and our relationships, we're not just talking about psychology, we're talking about physiology. We're talking about breath rate, posture, eye gaze, voice tone, neural pathways, and chemical messengers. We're talking about building a system within and between us that supports safety, vitality, and growth. Relationships are not static. They are dynamic living ecosystems, and the more we understand the science behind them, the more we can shape them, not just to survive, but to thrive, certainly. Here's a continuation of the speech on the science of emotions and relationships in the style of Dr. Andrew Huberman, extending the total length to approximately 4,000 words as requested. This part continues without headings or a concluding paragraph. One of the most compelling aspects of human emotion and relational behavior is the interplay between conscious intention and subconscious patterning. At any given moment, our behaviors and responses are governed by a combination of top-down and bottom-up processes. Top-down refers to the influence of our conscious thought, our prefrontal cortex planning, evaluating, and choosing our responses. Bottom-up processes involve sensory inputs and emotional responses arising from the brainstem and limbic structures, often operating without conscious awareness. This dynamic is why we can intellectually understand a situation but still feel overwhelmed, hurt, or emotionally triggered. Our biology responds faster than our cognition can catch up. Understanding this dual processing helps to depersonalize certain reactions in relationships and gives us tools to respond with greater clarity and regulation. In emotionally charged interactions, the amygdala can activate within milliseconds, far faster than the conscious brain. This activation can result in what's known as an amygdala hijack, where the fight or flight response overrides rational thinking. You might notice this during arguments when your heart races, your palms sweat, and it becomes difficult to listen or speak calmly. This isn't weakness, it's physiology, but with awareness we can build in buffers. One powerful tool is the use of a physiological sigh, 2 short nasal inhales followed by an extended exhale. This simple pattern has been shown to downregulate the sympathetic nervous system and return the body to a state more conducive to connection and understanding. This type of breath pattern doesn't require a quiet room or a yoga mat. It's portable and immediately effective in real-life moments of relational tension. Another powerful mechanism to consider is the brain's reward prediction error. When we anticipate a reward and receive it, dopamine is released. But interestingly, when we anticipate a reward and it doesn't come, dopamine levels drop sharply. In relationships, this mechanism plays a crucial role in disappointment and disconnection. If someone consistently says they will do something, call, show up, express affection, but fails to follow through, the brain perceives a reward prediction error, and over time, this reduces motivation and connection. This is why consistency is a foundation of trust and emotional safety. Reliability is not just a virtue, it is a neurochemical necessity for secure attachment and long-term relational health. On the flip side, unexpected positive experiences can cause a large dopamine spike. Small gestures of kindness, surprises, and affectionate communication can powerfully reinforce bonding when they exceed expectations. This doesn't mean we need to constantly escalate gestures in intensity, but it does suggest that novelty, intention, and attention hold significant weight in emotional reinforcement. A thoughtful note, a moment of undivided presence, or a spontaneous shared experience can recalibrate the emotional trajectory of a relationship, not just psychologically, but at the level of synapses and circuits. There's also the role of mirror neurons, which are involved in empathy and social learning. When we observe someone expressing an emotion, joy, sadness, anger, our brain simulates that emotion internally. This system enables empathy, but can also lead to emotional contagion. If your partner or close friend is anxious, and you're not aware of your own regulation strategies, their anxiety can become yours. This is especially true in close relationships where boundaries between self and other are more fluid. Recognizing this allows us to take responsibility for our internal state rather than becoming involuntarily fused with the emotional atmosphere of others. Self-regulation practices are therefore not just self-serving, they are relational hygiene. By modulating our own nervous system, we create a buffer zone in which another's distress doesn't immediately dysregulate us. One particularly effective tool for this is deliberate cold exposure, such as cold showers or ice baths. These stimulate noradrenaline and activate the locus coeruleus, enhancing alertness and increasing tolerance to stress. With repeated exposure, the stress threshold rises. This means we can remain present, grounded, and available in moments when we might otherwise shut down or lash out. Another aspect worth exploring is emotional granularity, the ability to distinguish between subtle variations in emotional experience. Someone with low granularity might simply feel bad or upset. Someone with high granularity can differentiate between frustration, disappointment, jealousy, embarrassment, and so on. Studies have shown that people with greater emotional granularity have better psychological and relational outcomes. They are more capable of expressing themselves accurately, leading to more productive conversations and fewer misunderstandings. This granularity is trainable. One way is through journaling, where you reflect not just on what happened, but on the precise emotional tone of the experience. Labeling emotions engages the prefrontal cortex and helps regulate the limbic system. This is sometimes summarized as name it to tame it, and while it sounds simple, it's a sophisticated cognitive intervention grounded in solid neuroscience. Time perception also plays a role in emotions and relationships. The brain encodes time differently depending on our internal state. During high arousal states, whether due to fear, excitement, or novelty, time appears to slow down. This happens because the brain is recording more information per unit of time. This has important implications for memory formation. Emotional moments, positive or negative, are recorded with higher fidelity and occupy more mental real estate. In long-term relationships, creating emotionally salient moments helps prevent time compression, where years seem to pass in a blur. Practicing intentional novelty, learning something new together, traveling, or even just altering routine, and create the temporal expansion that makes shared experiences more memorable and bonding. There is also compelling research on the default mode network DMN, a set of brain regions active during introspection, daydreaming, and mind wandering. While often considered a distraction, the DMN plays a role in understanding others, simulating future scenarios, and reflecting on past experiences. It helps us construct our narrative self, the story we tell ourselves about who we are and what our relationships mean. But if left unchecked, the DMN can also perpetuate rumination, especially after relational conflict. In these moments, structured practices like focused attention, meditation, or even engaging in a cognitively demanding task can help shift the brain out of unproductive loops and into more adaptive modes of functioning. Memory reconsolidation is another mechanism that opens the door to change. Each time we recall a memory, it becomes temporarily malleable. During this window, typically a few hours, the memory can be updated with new information before it's stored again. This has profound implications for healing relational wounds. For example, if a past memory of abandonment is recalled in a safe context, such as during a secure conversation with a trustworthy partner, it can be reconsolidated with new emotional data. This doesn't erase the memory, but it can alter its emotional tone and reduce its triggering power. This is the basis for many trauma-informed therapies, and even outside of formal therapy, it suggests that emotional healing is an ongoing, plastic process, not a fixed narrative we are doomed to relive. Eye contact also deserves attention. Sustained, non-threatening eye contact increases activity in the medial prefrontal cortex and enhances a sense of connection. It's a powerful trigger for oxytocin in release and limbic synchronization. However, for individuals with trauma or social anxiety, eye contact can feel overwhelming or invasive. This highlights the importance of pacing and consent in building emotional safety. It's not about enforcing one-size-fits-all rules, but understanding how different nervous systems respond to the same input. In safe relationships, even brief eye contact can serve as an anchor point, a neural handshake that reinforces attunement. Sound and voice have regulatory effects too. Prosody, the musicality of speech, carries emotional information independent of words. A soft, rising tone can soothe. A harsh, clipped tone can agitate. The auditory system is evolutionarily designed to detect emotional cues in sound, and this is why tone often communicates more than content. In fact, infants respond to tone long before they understand language, and adults retain that sensitivity. Voice modulation is not just a communication tool, it's a nervous system tool. Learning to speak with conscious modulation can change the outcome of emotionally charged interactions. It's one of the few levers we have immediate control over in real time. There's also a less visible but no less important system at play, the immune system. Chronic relational stress, especially unprocessed conflict, resentment, or emotional neglect, has been linked to systemic inflammation. The pathways that regulate stress overlap with those that regulate immune function, including cytokine production and gut barrier integrity. High levels of inflammation have been correlated with anxiety, depression, and impaired social function. What this means is that emotional pain doesn't just hurt feelings, it disrupts biological systems and affects long-term health. Emotional repair, empathy, and connection are as much medicine as they are moral goods. They recalibrate not just mood, but inflammatory markers and immune resilience. One final consideration is the role of awe and collective experience. When individuals engage in shared awe-inspiring activities, watching a sunset, attending a concert, participating in a ritual, there is a merging of self and other, a temporary dissolution of ego boundaries. These experiences activate the prefrontal cortex and posterior cingulate in ways that enhance perspective, taking, and reduce self-focus. In relationships, shared awe can create bonding moments that transcend routine. They offer a reset, a reminder of the broader context in which the relationship exists. These moments are rare, but they can be cultivated through intentional design of experience, not just serendipity. Across all these domains, neural, hormonal, physiological, and psychological, the theme is clear. Emotions and relationships are deeply embodied processes. They are not merely outcomes of circumstance or personality, but of systems that can be influenced, trained, and shaped. Understanding these systems provides a new lens through which to view human connection. It transforms conflict from a moral failing to a biological mismatch, and it turns repair into a neurological rebalancing. It reminds us that love is not just a feeling but a practice, a repeated sequence of actions that reinforce circuits of safety, attunement, and trust. Through consistent behaviors, eye contact, tone of voice, deliberate breath, structured novelty, physical touch, emotional granularity, and stress modulation, we can engineer relational environments that foster resilience and intimacy. These practices don't guarantee ease, but they do offer clarity. They allow us to work with, rather than against, the fundamental architecture of the human nervous system. In doing so, we move from a reactive stance to a responsive one, building relationships that are not just emotionally satisfying but biologically sustainable. In sum, the science of emotions and relationships reveals that our capacity to connect, to love, and to endure together is not just poetic, it is profoundly biological. The circuits of trust, attachment, empathy, and resilience are not abstract concepts, but concrete mechanisms within the brain and body. With awareness and deliberate effort, we can shape our emotional lives, not by suppressing feelings, but by understanding them, regulating them, and using them as a guide toward deeper connection. Relationships, at their core, are neural ecosystems. And like any ecosystem, they thrive with care, consistency, and conscious design. When we begin to see emotion not as a weakness, but as a form of intelligence, when we view connection not as a luxury, but as a biological imperative, we unlock the full potential of what it means to be human together.